Hello, my name is Janice, and I want to share a story with you. A story that's full of twists and turns involving love, betrayal, and a quest for self-respect. Before we jump in, let me introduce the main characters of this drama. It begins with me, Janice. I was born into a well-off family, which some might view as privileged. From the outside, it looked like I had it all, a life of luxury from the start. However, I was taught to appreciate hard work and to earn my keep, rather than relying on family wealth. My father is a self-made mogul in the world of engine additives, having transformed a small niche into a thriving empire. My mother, equally industrious, created her chain of successful beauty salons, becoming a well-known figure in the beauty industry. Their divorce, when I was 21, was handled with grace. They split their assets evenly and maintained a friendship, which was no small feat. My father chose to remain single, immersing himself in his business and enjoying his independence. Meanwhile, my mother remarried, though I remained her only child. Then there's Matthew, my husband, who, as time would reveal, became the catalyst for a significant upheaval in my life. We married shortly after I graduated from college and had just begun a job teaching music to energetic children, a job I loved. Everything seemed perfect until I got pregnant, and that's when Matthew's true nature began to surface. One lazy Sunday, as he relaxed on the sofa, Matthew suggested out of the blue that I should quit my job to stay home with the baby. "Why don't you just quit your job and stay at home? We'll manage," he said nonchalantly. I was stunned. Quitting my job wasn't feasible on his salary alone, and besides, I was passionate about my work. But Matthew dismissed my concerns with a smirk, suggesting we could easily rely on my father's wealth. I was infuriated by his assumption that we could just tap into my parents' resources. This wasn't the first time he'd hinted at it, but discussing it so casually felt disrespectful. The situation escalated further during a dinner with his parents, where he brought it up again. Both his mother, sharp and opportunistic, and his father, who never missed a chance to offer advice, enthusiastically supported the idea, painting grand visions of a comfortable life funded by my family's money. Each comment felt like a deeper betrayal, as if they saw me not as a person, but as a gateway to an easier life. That night, as I lay beside Matthew, I felt an overwhelming sense of isolation. I questioned him softly, hoping I'd misunderstood his intentions. He turned to face me, his eyes once tender, now calculating, and said, "It's not about need, Janice. It's about being smart. Your parents can afford it, and we deserve a break. Why not take advantage of that?" The word deserve echoed in my mind long after he fell asleep. It became clear that our views on dignity and independence were fundamentally different. This realization was the beginning of a profound personal journey for me, one where I would have to decide how much of my values I was willing to compromise. We were on divergent paths, holding different values close to our hearts. I found myself awake, staring at the ceiling, grappling with missed warnings and uncertain futures. Despite the initial clash over financial independence and personal pride with Matthew, I held a faint hope that we might realign our perspectives. Unfortunately, I was mistaken. Enter Matthew's parents from stage left, bringing with them a whirlwind of chaos. Matthew's parents were far from paragons of self-sufficiency. They had a knack for locating freebies, and my family's financial stability was like a siren call to them. One evening, as we sat in our modest living room, David began pitching a new business venture that just needed a little startup cash. Mary, with her cloyingly sweet tone that could induce a toothache, chimed in, "Janice, darling, with your family's backing, you could give us a leg up on this. It's practically a sure thing." I maintained my composure with effort. "Mary, David, I've mentioned before that we're handling our finances without outside help. My parents' wealth isn't part of this conversation." But David persisted like a seasoned salesman. "Come on, Janice. You wouldn't even notice the money gone. What's a few thousand to your dad? He probably drops that on golf over a weekend." I was stunned by their audacity. There they were in our home, enjoying our hospitality, yet shamelessly eyeing my family's earnings as if entitled to them. Matthew attempted to mediate. "Maybe they have a point, Em. It's just a loan, right? We'd be helping the family. The word family tasted bitter. Matthew, since when did it become our responsibility to fund your parents' ventures? The atmosphere turned frosty. Mary, never one to miss a chance for drama, exclaimed, "Well, I never. Here we thought family supported each other. But if you're going to be stingy—" Seeing red, I retorted, "Working for what you have isn't stingy, Mary. It's called being responsible. Maybe that's something you should consider." David tried to defuse the tension. "Look, Janice, let's not get upset. We're just talking here." "Talking, right?" I replied sarcastically, frustrated that our conversations always circled back to how my family could solve their problems. After they left, with Matthew apologizing for his parents' misunderstanding, I lay awake. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding. It was an outright intrusion by two people who viewed me not as a family member, but as an easy financial resource. When our daughter Elizabeth was born, I hoped for a change, but the dynamics only intensified. Matthew's parents arrived at the hospital with a cheap, clearance-tagged oneness, while my parents brought a beautifully hand-knit blanket and quality baby essentials. Mary's response to their generosity was laced with scorn and jealousy. "Wow, really laying it on thick, aren't they? Must be nice to just throw money around. They could have bought you a house instead of all this fluff." Matthew laughed along. "Yeah, Mom's right, Em. Your folks don't hold back. A house might have been more practical, huh?" Holding our newborn, my heart sank. Here I was, a new mother, caught between the joy of my daughter's arrival and the unyielding pressure of familial expectations, struggling to navigate a path that honored my values while somehow maintaining peace. The realization dawned that this struggle wasn't just about money. It was about respect, boundaries, and the kind of future I wanted for my own family. As I held our newborn daughter, all Matthew and his parents seemed to focus on was how my parents had chosen to spend their money. It was painful hearing Matthew echo his mother's mercenary thoughts. It made me question, to them, was our daughter just another way to secure financial gains? I attempted to keep the peace, insisting, "It's not about the price tag, right? It's the thought that counts." But David was relentless, suggesting, "Sure, but think about it. Investing in property now, that's a gift that keeps on giving." The car ride home from the hospital was strained. Matthew tried to reassure me, claiming his parents were just old-fashioned and meant no harm. Yet, doubts began to gnaw at me, wondering if Matthew's affection was genuine or if he was more interested in my family's wealth. A few weeks later, during another uninvited visit, the topic arose again. We were squeezed into our living room, Elizabeth fussing in my arms, and Mary couldn't resist commenting on the new stroller my mom had gifted us. "Must be nice having your folks shower Elizabeth with all these fancy toys and gadgets. Though a contribution to a house fund would have been more useful, don't you think?" she said, her voice laden with passive aggression. Matthew, sitting next to his mom, agreed. "Actually, babe, we've been thinking, maybe your parents could help with a down payment instead of more baby stuff. Makes sense, right?" I was stunned. Not only were Matthew's parents relentless, but now Matthew was echoing their sentiments, turning our daughter's birth into leverage for financial gain. It felt as though I was trapped in a twisted reality where love and family were overshadowed by material wealth. "Is that what this is about for you, Matthew? Using my parents for money?" I couldn't mask the hurt in my voice. "I thought we were in this together, for better or worse, not for richer or poorer." Matthew seemed taken aback, but Mary merely sniffed. "Well, when your wife's parents are wealthy, it's only practical to think about these things." After they left, I lay awake, Elizabeth sleeping peacefully beside me, and the harsh truth hit me. My marriage and family felt like a transaction, and I was the currency. The ensuing years were indeed a roller coaster. Elizabeth blossomed into a spirited 4-year-old, brimming with life and laughter, but life threw unexpected curveballs. First, it was my mother. Her accident was sudden and devastating. I was engulfed in grief, struggling to hold myself together for Elizabeth's sake. Yet, Matthew's initial response wasn't to ask how I was coping, but rather, "So, How much are you getting from your mom's will?" It felt like a slap in the face. My mother hadn't even been laid to rest, and here he was, eyeing her legacy like a vulture. According to my mom's will, I inherited the beauty salon chain. I knew nothing about running a business, but Matthew was eager to step in. "Babe, let me handle this. You know I've got a knack for business," he offered with all his usual confidence. Lost in my grief, I allowed him to take the lead, though I ensured the ownership papers stayed in my name. I hoped, perhaps naively, that he might turn things around for us. Then, barely a year later, my father passed away from a heart attack. Losing both my parents in such a short period shattered something inside me. I needed Matthew more than ever, yet I was beginning to understand that our views on money, support, and family were worlds apart. The day after my father passed away, I was reeling from the loss, hoping for some semblance of sympathy, or at least a respectful silence from Matthew and his parents. Unfortunately, that was not to be. As soon as they walked through the door, David barely hid his excitement, eagerly speculating about the inheritance. "So, Janice, there must be a hefty sum coming your way, huh?" His eyes gleamed with barely contained glee. I saw red. "Can you not, for once, just stop talking about money?" I exploded, my words ringing sharply through the room. Mary adopted an offended demeanor immediately. "Well, I never. We're just concerned about the family's future. No need to be rude." Matthew attempted to smooth things over, as usual. They're just curious. It's a big deal, you know." "A big deal?" I echoed, my voice rising in disbelief. "My parents are gone, Matthew, and all you and your parents can think about is cashing in. Is that all I am to you? A bank?" The room fell silent, the tension so thick it felt tangible. Matthew glanced between me and his parents, mumbling a half-hearted apology. But the damage was done. I could no longer stand the sight of their greed, their complete lack of empathy. "Get out," I said, my voice steady but ice-cold. They left, Mary muttering under her breath and David scowling. Matthew lingered, trying to justify his parents' behavior, but I was beyond listening. 3 days later, Matthew burst through the door, his face alight with what he considered good news. "Babe, I've got awesome news," he exclaimed, barely containing his excitement. "I've struck a deal to sell the hairdresser chain. Can you believe it?" My jaw dropped. "What? You did what? Without even asking me?" I was seething, a mixture of betrayal and disbelief coursing through me. Before we could delve into a serious discussion, his parents showed up, ready to celebrate as if we'd won the lottery. They brought a lavish feast from a fancy restaurant and high-roller cigars. Mary was beaming, waving the cigars in my face. "Guess what, honey? We've sold the old condo and put down a deposit on a beach house. We're all moving to the coast." I felt as if I were trapped in a nightmare. "Hold on, you what?" "Nobody asked me about moving. I don't want to live by the beach with all that humidity and the winds with a kid. Are you out of your mind?" Mary dismissed my concerns with a wave of her hand. "Oh, don't you worry about that. We've also booked a cruise. You should come with us. It'll be fabulous." "Where is this money coming from?" I demanded, my patience wearing thin. "Well, darling, with your father's passing and the sale of the salons, money's no object now. We're set for life. Think about it. Yachts, private jets. We're living the dream." Mary's eyes sparkled with dollar signs. I turned to Matthew, utterly dumbfounded. "Why are we even talking about selling my mom's business again? And what's this nonsense about being set for life?" "Babe, it makes sense," Matthew insisted. "Managing both businesses will be too much. We need to focus on what's more profitable. It's for our future, for our daughter's future." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The greed, the audacity, it was all too much. "Show me the financials for the salon," I demanded. "I want to see everything before we make any rash decisions." Matthew squirmed, avoiding eye contact. "Look, it's all about our future, about making sure we're comfortable." His parents chimed in, pressing me to just let go and enjoy the windfall. But as they spoke, it became painfully clear. This wasn't just about securing a comfortable future. It was about exploiting my grief and inheritance for their gain. As I surveyed the scene before me, all I could envision were vultures circling overhead. Why the sudden rush to sell the hairdressing shops? I pressed Tom for an explanation. With a nonchalant shrug that seemed to dismiss the gravity of the situation, he replied with what he thought was rationality. Look, after your dad's passing, managing both businesses doesn't add up. We need to concentrate on what's more profitable. The auto oil venture is literally striking gold compared to the salons. His parents quickly joined the conversation, eagerly chiming in. Think about it, dear. Selling those small shops could set you up for a life of comfort and luxury. Why bother with them? His mother's voice was coated with greed, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. Their blatant greed made my skin crawl. I want you all to leave, I demanded, my voice steady and strong. This is a time for mourning, not for scavenging through what he left behind. Matthew attempted to interject, but I silenced him. And another thing, this inheritance we're discussing, it's mine. You and your parents have no say in this matter. The room chilled as they realized I was not as compliant as they had assumed. With heavy steps and darker scowls, they left, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the looming battle ahead. The day after my father's funeral was bleak, draped in a fog of sorrow. Matthew, however, seemed oblivious to the somber mood. Over a lackluster breakfast, he was already plotting. We need to call a meeting with your father's company executives pronto, he declared, his voice cutting through the silence aggressively. I paused, toast in hand, and looked at him. Matthew, my father has just been laid to rest. Can't this wait? I need time to process all this. He dismissed my concerns with a casual flick of his hand, emphasizing that time was money and we had to act swiftly. Frustrated and seeking some solid footing, I contacted our family lawyer for a detailed overview of the barbershop chain's status and an insight into my father's business dealings. A month swirled past, filled with legal terms and financial statements, during which Matthew and his parents returned, bombarding me with unsolicited advice and greedy propositions. Without a greeting, Matthew dived into conversation. You know, I've been thinking, I'm the right man to take over your dad's company. His audacious statement left me dumbfounded, but he wasn't finished. And I'll need a new car, something that fits a business leader. The latest BMW should suffice. Before I could respond, Mary jumped in with her extravagant demands. The beach house is nearly done. We just need an additional $460,000 for finishing touches and some extra for new luxury furniture. And darling, I expect you to fund an account for my expenses. I need to maintain my lifestyle. Listening to their relentless demands, something within me snapped. No more. Standing firm, clutching the divorce papers like a protective talisman, I interrupted their chatter. Matthew, we need to talk, I declared, placing the documents in front of him on the coffee table. He picked them up, confusion etching his face. What's this? He managed to ask, voice trembling. Divorce papers, I announced, each word clear and decisive. I've had the business audited, Matthew. You've driven it to the brink of collapse. As I confronted Matthew about the management of our business, his face paled, his demeanor that of a child caught in a misdeed. I was trying to make things better, he stammered, his excuses as fragile as his waning confidence. Make it better? By firing our most talented staff and neglecting the essentials that made the business thrive? I retorted, my voice rising, fueled by a potent mix of anger and betrayal. Mary, ever the meddler, couldn't resist butting in. Now, dear, let's remember he's entitled to half of everything. Marriage binds assets, after all. I couldn't help but laugh, though it was void of any joy. Nice try, but everything's been in my name since before I made the colossal mistake of marrying your son. He gets nothing from me. The room fell silent, their grandiose plans crumbling. And another thing, I continued, fixing Matthew with a firm gaze. You're going to repay every penny you've cost the business. Every single penny. When the reality of the divorce sank in, Matthew became desperate. Please, can't we talk about this? There has to be another way, he begged, his voice cracking with desperation. Not to be outdone in theatrics, his parents launched into a tearful saga, about how they had sunk all their funds into the coastal house, a property now at risk without further investment. "We're going to lose everything," his mother sobbed, her tears flowing freely. "Please think of what this means for us." I listened, my heart hardened by their prior actions, feeling nothing but cold detachment. "Sorry, but that's your mess," I said, my tone firm and resolute. With newfound determination, I guided them to the door, closing it, and this chapter of my life behind them. In the days that followed, I didn't dwell on the past. Instead, I focused on the future. Selling the apartment that Matthew and I once shared provided just enough for a quaint, welcoming house that promised a new beginning for my daughter and me. Stepping into our new home, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a sense of peace enveloping us in a way that had been missing for far too long. The wheels of justice turned slowly, but surely. When they finally caught up with Matthew, he was ordered by the courts to compensate for the turmoil he had inflicted on the hairdresser chain. His recklessness had a price, and he was forced to liquidate his share of our old apartment to meet his financial obligations. Watching him be held accountable was a bittersweet vindication for all the hardships he had caused. Out of nowhere, my phone rang one day, and on the other end was my former mother-in-law, her voice tinged with desperation. "We're in a bind. We need help to buy a place. Any amount would help," she pleaded, her audacity leaving me incredulous. I took a deep breath, collecting my thoughts before responding. "You made your bed," I replied, my tone steady and resolute. "It's time you lie in it." Ending the call, a mix of emotions washed over me, my anger at their continued sense of entitlement undeniable, but also a profound relief at having finally set firm boundaries. After the tumultuous divorce and reclaiming control over my mom's hairdressing chain, life began to brighten again. It was a challenging journey, but gradually, the salons started to regain their former vibrancy. Welcoming back the talented stylists we'd lost felt like a triumphant parade. Watching them walk through those doors again, ready to weave their magic, breathe life back into the place. It turned out I was more suited for the business world than I ever imagined. Every day brought new lessons and surprises about what I could achieve. If not for the harsh twists life threw my way, I might never have discovered this capability within myself. Managing my dad's car oil business was another challenge. For now, I decided to hire a manager to oversee operations while I acclimated to the industry. "It's all yours for now, but keep me in the loop," I told him, making it clear that I was still the one in charge. I thought about the future. Maybe when Elizabeth is around 22, I might pass it on to her if she's interested. I wanted her to have options, to choose her path. Meanwhile, our new home, just Elizabeth and me, became a sanctuary of peace, a stark contrast to the chaos we had left behind. It was small, but it was ours, a place where we could grow, heal, and start anew. Every corner of our home was filled with laughter, every nook cradling a memory we were creating together. In the garden, Elizabeth's laughter was balm to my soul. "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to be just like you," she'd say, her eyes alight with wonder and admiration. "You're going to be even more amazing," I'd respond, pulling her into a hug. I knew deep down that we were on the brink of something wonderful. Together, we were unstoppable, ready to embrace whatever the future held with open arms and hopeful hearts.